As we commemorate the anniversary of Sergei Rachmaninoff's death, it is also fitting to celebrate the 155th birthday of one of his favorite musical partners, the legendary conductor Willem Mengelberg. We visit the Dutch city of The Hague, where the Netherlands Music Institute is housed in the modern architectural colossus of the City Hall as part of the municipal archives. Among the many treasures housed by the Institute is Willem Mengelberg's collection, which is of great value to historical performance practice because it conveys detailed information about the conductor's performances with some of the greatest musicians of his time. Welcome. My name is Elgar Niels, expert from the Rachmaninoff Network. I'm accompanied today by Frits Zwart, the revered authority on Willem Mengelberg, the Dutch conductor. And we will be talking about Rachmaninoff's work together with Willem Mengelberg. Frits, you wrote all those books here, 2 volumes. What kind of man was Mengelberg?
Well, as a conductor, he became world famous. He is the man who brought Mahler to the Netherlands, for instance. So he was a very gifted music student in his early days, and having studied in Cologne, he finished his studies as a pianist, as a composer, and as a conductor. And he must have been a quite ambitious musician who chose to become a conductor, and his first conducting place was Lucerne in Switzerland, where he had a kind of all-round job, being the music master of the city, being the organist, being the chief of the church music, had a music school, worked as a pianist, as a composer, and of course of the orchestra in Lucerne. And then in 1895 he became conductor in Amsterdam, where he enrolled his career, so to speak. And in 1902 he gets acquainted with Gustav Mahler, and then he becomes the disciple of Mahler. And in the years around 1900 he is also a champion of Strauss music, Richard Strauss music. Strauss dedicated already in 1898 the symphonic poem Ein Heldenleben to Mengelberg and the orchestra. And Mengelberg was someone who cherished very much the Concertgebouw Orchestra. He built it up in all those years. He was a conductor from 1895 until 1945. So he held a very long hold on the orchestra, and he gave his, everything to build up the orchestra into a world famous ensemble. And already in short after 1900 it was the orchestra which could play, as Richard Strauss said, all my music. And the secret behind this was that Mengelberg was a conductor of rehearsing, and that was not that common in those days.
Mm-hmm. And he had a very specific ear for sound.
Well, actually he followed lessons in Lucerne with all the orchestral musicians, so he was in a sense able to play all the instruments, and he was, for instance, very keen on the timpani work, but also very much on the strings. The sound of the Concertgebouw Orchestra, the sound of the strings was very famous in the days of his career. So you can see in his scores, every detail is worked out and thought out by Mengelberg. You can read it in many reviews. The sound of the orchestra changed to what was common sound of, and he was he could rehearse endless, and he also talked endless. It was one of his famous habits, talking, and many musicians didn't like that, of course, but I spoke to musicians and they told me that way of rehearsing, which was annoying also, but it had effect on their playing.
Exactly.
It's somewhere you can't understand why this is mystic, how this happened, but every time he formed the orchestra into his own thoughts about balance, sound, etc.
Yeah, and his thoughts were very specifically prepared. We can see it today in the wealth of scores that we found, which is only a very small part of the complete collection here at the Nederlands Muziekinstituut. So how many scores are there?
The annotated scores are around 1100, and then in some cases, for instance, with the Saint Matthew Passion by Bach, there are 5 scores, so his own score, but then a score also for the continuo parts and so on. So he prepared those materials for his musicians' crew.
At the time of his first concerts with Willem Mengelberg, Rachmaninoff was a direct colleague of comparable promise and status. Without any formal training or particular ambition, he had drifted into a conducting career to earn a living. His talent, however, proved to be such that within but a few years he rose to the highest position in Russia, chief conductor at the Moscow Bolshoi Theater. So from the start, Willem Mengelberg and Sergei Rachmaninoff must have appreciated each other at eye level. Rachmaninoff, however, never performed as a conductor with the Concertgebouw Orchestra. When he gave his first concerts in the 1908 season, the public turned up primarily to hear the composer of the world-famous Prelude in C-sharp minor perform his own music. Dutch critics showed pleasant surprise at Rachmaninoff's exceptional abilities as a pianist, notwithstanding an occasional critical note regarding his strong touch, which was, after all, quite modern in those days. Here is the score of the second piano concerto. It says even Willem Mengelberg here on the cover. It's bound for Willem Mengelberg, obviously. When I opened it, I was a little taken aback. He says, first performance with composer as soloist at the Concertgebouw in 1902 under my guidance. 1902, so I was a little surprised because I couldn't find any note about 1902.
In many scores, he has these kind of directions or souvenirs, and then the years are always you have to you can't trust the notes on the years, on the dates. You can trust him when it's about, like here, how passionate Rachmaninoff wants it, etc. This kind of things, but exact about a certain date. There are many scores, for instance, Tchaikovsky scores, and then he gives absolute false dates. But I think he does it from memory without checking, was it 1902 or 6 or 8 or whatever.
Now, it is nice, and perhaps for our viewers, just to read a little Dutch. Nota bene, het eerste thema wilde hij, Rachmaninoff, fortissimo, zeer hartstochtelijk gevoeld. Iedere noot zeer vurig. I will translate it. The first theme he Rachmaninoff wanted to have fortissimo, very passionate, felt very passionate, and every note very fiery.
Yeah.
And that is also, in fact, what it says already in the score.
Mm-hmm.
So that is specific of him, and also very specific is that he is already immediately specific about the tempi, which are quite different from what Rachmaninoff wrote in first instance.
Yeah.
And that is even, this metronome marking is even in Rachmaninoff's own manuscript. But Rachmaninoff specifically asked
a bit faster.
Well, quite a bit faster, which was also typical about Rachmaninoff. But the tempo can be trusted. That's very interesting to see.
Well, that also demonstrates the value of those scores, all those directions, and he must have felt it was special to have been working with Rachmaninoff, and you see it also in those Mahler scores. He felt that this was a special thing to write down, and for today's historic practice, music playing, it is very valuable to have those directions.
Yeah. Only looking at the score already, you see all the kind of the speed at which he thought. It's also the kind of he reads the music, and you see the energy with which he because in quieter passages you see it's far, it's smaller. This is, of course, these pages go swiftly.
Yeah. Yeah. Somehow you feel this energy from the scores.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's wonderful.
Yeah. Well, this is a beautiful photograph which Rachmaninoff gave to Mengelberg, 1908, after a series of concerts in the Netherlands, Amsterdam, Arnhem, The Hague, and then after that a concert also in Frankfurt, where Mengelberg was also conductor of the Museumsgesellschaft and the choir there, and then as a kind of say goodbye, he presents his photo to Mengelberg, dated, what is it, 17 March?
December of 1908.
Even kijken. Oh ja, December.
Yeah.
Dated in Dresden.
Where Rachmaninoff lived, so probably from, he sent it by post, and it says
Herren Willem Mengelberg.
In Hoogachtung, with reverence.
With dankbaarheid, yeah.
And dankbaarheid, so it's great gratitude.
Yeah.
So it's very warm for Rachmaninoff. Rachmaninoff is always a little distant, but it's very, very warm. And it says actually a lot.
This is interesting, huh? This score, which has been sent to Mengelberg by the publisher Gustav, and this is November 1909. This must have been a direct consequence of those performances that maybe Rachmaninoff said, send Mengelberg this score, maybe he will perform the piece, which he never did in this, because it's so empty.
Yeah.
When you compare it with the
it's completely clean, so he probably...
Maybe, well, most of the times, though he got many scores by all kinds of composers and publishers, and then he writes something or he gives just a line or whatever, and this is so blank. And
so perhaps he didn't like the work, or well, we don't know.
No.
What is very interesting for us to see is the actual handwriting of the publisher.
Herren Willem Mengelberg, zur freundlichen Erinnerung. Moscow, in those days, Mengelberg also conducted in Moscow.
Exactly.
So they have met, of course, and then maybe Gustav said, may I send you this score? And so on. Yeah.
Just as favorably as Rachmaninoff was received in Amsterdam, Willem Mengelberg conversely achieved considerable success a year later with his first performances as a conductor in Russia. In 1910, however, the personalities and firm musical views of Mengelberg and the Russian composer Nicholas Medtner clashed during a rehearsal of Beethoven's Fourth Piano Concerto. Unlike many of his prominent colleagues, Rachmaninoff did not side with his compatriot in the press scandal that followed. He persisted in appearances as soloist with the Concertgebouw Orchestra in the Netherlands a few months later, where he was set to perform his own third piano concerto, to which Mengelberg also added lauded performances of the composer's Second Symphony at concerts in Amsterdam and The Hague. For the concert season 1911, Willem Mengelberg conducts Rachmaninoff's Second Symphony. And actually, one of the concerts he gives is Rachmaninoff also performs his third piano concerto, so he must have heard this performance, and probably he also made some comment on the tempi. Again, typically for Rachmaninoff, the tempo while composing is given a lot slower than here. We go already quite fast. Yeah. There is no tempo change, but here already. Mengelberg writes another tempo change to a completely faster tempo here also. And that's very interesting to see also here how in this passage where he writes achterziehen. So the eighth notes needs to, you have to pull them. So it's again so specific that you really suspect that the composer somehow must have been behind it. And actually it's only thanks to this talk that I started to compare this score with scores or the indication that Rachmaninoff gave to other conductors, that I see that there are clear similarities, not always the same, but on very specific points there are similarities. So I will look into this further and look through the entire score, which is, by the way, now available online, so even other people can look through the entire score today. And we will display the link, of course, with this video. It's very clear also already, if you look then at the start of this, the second theme. Here, for instance. And he notes for the 76, which is also already at the beginning. So what he says, what he says is he goes through in one flow, whereas normally people read, okay, moderato, let's go slow. And even here he says 80. And that's also very typical of the other scores which were annotated either on the instruction by Rachmaninoff. third piano concerto, however, was not so popular. Still, Mengelberg performed it several times with various soloists, but the first time with Rachmaninoff himself. When I saw this score for the first time, thanks to you, it was already in the 1990s somewhere, I thought this is the absolute treasure. When we look at this score, the wondrous thing is that again, Mengelberg notes different tempi from what the composer actually asked for. He even says, instead of allegro ma non tanto, he says allegro molto, and he notes a new tempo. The authority of the tempo is of course proven later by Rachmaninoff's own recording of the work, which at that time Mengelberg couldn't have heard because it was made in 1939, 1940. This is a souvenir of that.
Yeah, of the early days.
And we see that actually Rachmaninoff's thought about the score hadn't changed. So there must have been a moment between writing and then playing it as a performer. Then he changed tempos. But after that, there are not such big differences.
No. So the conclusion is that this tempo is from the beginning.
Yes, almost.
In performing.
Yeah. So in conception, it may have been a slower tempo, and that's interesting to see.
Well, what you also see here, this is all pencil, and here there's ink, and here all those notes also in ink, where a performance which has been kept on a record by Gieseking.
Yes.
It's also very. Maybe we'll speak about this later.
Sure.
But it's very different. He made different notation. This is Mengelberg's own writing. Here, this is very old. This must have been from those days. But this is much later. This is quite rare in Mengelberg's.
He even says so.
But it's quite rare in the scores of Mengelberg. It's always the old notations, and this blue and red and sometimes gray, but this is quite rare. So it has a special meaning.
Sure. And Mengelberg, in fact, also took his own freedom at certain points. And now we get to the point which is quite typical for Mengelberg, and must have been a surprise for Rachmaninoff, where he notes at the point he adds a pauk, timpani, on cipher 5, which is just before the second theme. And Rachmaninoff must have it, because this is clearly the early.
He heard it.
Yeah, he must have heard that. but it didn't disturb the friendship, clearly.
No.
So.
No.
And this
you see that every now and then more in Mengelberg's scores. For instance, in Strauss scores, he very subtle, very small change in. It doesn't alter. It gives a better effect or a stronger effect or whatever.
And,
it never upset the composer.
Yes, and he clearly wanted to make that separation for the second theme, and then come back here the crescendo, and then this is very interesting, because at this point in Rachmaninoff's own recording, you hear that Rachmaninoff, and he recorded it with Eugene Ormandy, the other conductor whom he revered. Here, Ormandy follows the allargando tempo. It says allargando, it says here. It says a tempo here. And Ormandy says ti da di So Rachmaninoff wants to get it forward. Here, the tempo starts 96, is only a little faster, 104, and it's completely steady. So Rachmaninoff thought of that in one go, and here is the proof of that.
Documentation about it.
Yes.
Yes, yes, yes.
So it's wonderful to see that. Here's the cadenza. And you see Rachmaninoff played the so-called light cadenza, which isn't so very light if you want to play it properly. But then, of course, Gieseking played the heavy cadenza. The effect is quite different. If you play the heavy cadenza, the first movement clearly has a clear culmination, but it seems somehow separate from the second and third movement. If you play the fast cadenza, the unity of the entire work is not disturbed by big climax. So it's very interesting also that Rachmaninoff chose the lighter cadenza, even if some people
For
say,
musical reasons.
Exactly, for musical reasons. Because he could just as well have played the other one.
Yeah.
Very interesting is how there's just a little cut that Rachmaninoff made.
Yeah.
And actually, it's the only cut that I could find that was made during this performance. And at other points, you see that there is suggestions for cuts, but they are not taken, or they come from the Horowitz performance in pencil. So that's interesting to see. And it's just a very small cut.
Yep, 2 bars.
So
this is a nice example of Mengelberg leading or making notes on a certain soloist. Here you have the combination about the ink thing for Gieseking, and here the direction for Horowitz, who wants to make a cut there.
Wonderful to see that. And here, of course, for the cut, which is in pencil. So he immediately makes a distinction.
Yeah.
Already at that point, he makes a distinction so that even afterward, we don't have, we cannot make any mistake about for whom the cut was meant.
Yeah.
And again, serialize.
Yep.
So it's very specific about that. It's not even pianissimo, no, it's pianissimo.
Yep.
Very soft.
It's also interesting to note that Mengelberg's direction are mostly in German.
Yes.
He was a Dutchman, but because his parents came from Germany 2 years before he was born, he had actually a German education at home. I went to school in Holland. And
they spoke German too?
Yes, so he was completely bilingual. And you can't hear that he speaks formal Dutch, as everyone did in those days, and then beautiful in German also. And many of his notes are in German. So you can't study, it's very hard to study those scores without knowing anything about the German language. In the meantime, we had in 1920 his jubilee, where Rachmaninoff made a 4-bar composition of 5 bars, which is, I think, a kind of very small prelude to what has to come. His congratulations to Mengelberg on this jubilee in 1920. Solo-Stimme, imponente, herzliche Glückwünsche, and then Korbesse, which we just had, ungefähr 500. This is a joke. Sergei Rachmaninoff. It's a signature in music.
Exactly. And going all the way down.
Yes, going all the way, also subtle. Yeah, and then zeer grave orgel. And
very bright.
A grand jeu, which is a kind of sound, but so low, you can't play it in the organ.
No.
Yeah? It's
not even with the foot
piano.
pedal.
No. It's sounding.
It's sounding. So at typically Rachmaninoff humor, by the way, this way. And it also you see a combination of tongue in cheek and also again the warmth of that relationship.
Yeah.
So Rachmaninoff actually decides to dedicate work to Willem Mengelberg already when he's writing the work in 1913.
Then already. Okay.
And that work is the choral symphony, The Bells.
Yeah.
Which was reportedly one of Rachmaninoff's absolute favorite works.
Mm-hmm.
And he writes in it, Meinem Freunde Willem Mengelberg und sein Concertgebouw Orchestra in Amsterdam gewidmet. Dedicated to my friend Willem Mengelberg and his Concertgebouw Orchestra. So the Concertgebouw Orchestra was also very important to him.
Yes, that's understandable. That's the same thing as Strauss did, but not with Meinem Freunde. Strauss writes to Willem Mengelberg and the Concertgebouw Orchestra. So this instrument and his player, but Rachmaninoff adds my friend
Exactly.
to that. So it's quite special.
But actually, in the end, because of course the war intervened, and in the end Rachmaninoff never heard Mengelberg perform this work, but Mengelberg did perform the work.
Yeah, sure. 1923.
And not at the little occasion.
No. That's a very special occasion. Then he is 25 years conductor of the Choral Society Toonkunst, which was his second instrument besides the orchestra. So this has been a very special occasion, a jubilee performance.
Yeah. This is the reason I'm putting here the piano reduction, with which he worked with the choir.
Yeah.
So he says also, look here, I will take for this, because it was quite a large choir, I will take a smaller group, half of the large choir, very light and fine, yes, fine line, subtle. That's the beginning. Listen to the bells. And he's very specific also already, because you find in the score, you see he's already noting, okay, this is a difficult entry. And he writes, bassen onzeker.
Did you see tenor?
Yeah.
Onzeker.
Yes.
Inzet.
Yes. And here is also basis.
Yeah.
Not
So
sure.
he will certainly have helped him.
Exactly. So that's how he. That's another part of the work that is not in the big score, but here it's because he had to prepare them, and his preparation was rigorous, wasn't it?
Yeah, always.
And also with the choir, was he noted also?
Yeah, it was very severe. The only thing is the result is very important, and no matter what it costs.
So here we have, again he notes, bassen onzeker, not certain, but also interesting. He says, it's Dutch, fast tempo.
Steady.
Not, normally he writes fast.
Yeah, fast tempo, yeah.
So he is already preparing himself for the fact that he has to communicate with the Dutch people here.
It's also in Dutch. Kleinkoor, licht, Van Toon, yeah, it's all
very
for
light.
the choirs
Yeah.
in Holland.
And not too broad.
De achtste,
Niet te
niet
breed.
te breed, yeah.
Yeah. So all in Dutch. So here we have both scores, the piano reduction for the choir and the full score.
Mm-hmm.
Mengelberg obviously notes that there are some differences. He writes, and in Dutch, deze bladzij stemt niet overeen. This page doesn't. Is it
Quite different. Somewhat different.
Somewhat different, but not in Dutch. Fest ritmus.
Yeah.
So again, he returns to German. Did he speak German with the orchestra then?
No. In Amsterdam it was just Dutch, of course, but he conducted, of course, many times in Germany, so it was his second language.
So here also vlot, but now vlotter.
Vlotter, which is a bit
exact.
more, yeah.
Yes. Zeer scherpe ritmiek. At 64.
Yeah, well, this is fast ritmus.
Yeah. Yes. In the summer of 1930, Rachmaninoff, who was in Switzerland at the time, went to Arosa and met Mengelberg. Do we have any? Did he come to the Casa Mengelberg?
No, Casa Mengelberg was not very easy to reach, so I didn't find any documentation on their meeting.
Mm-hmm. So we have the Casa Mengelberg, which was Mengelberg's what is it?
Private home,
Private
summer house,
home.
is
Exactly.
chalet. It's an immense, big chalet where he received there his friends and acquaintances during his summer. First he went there after the concert season, traveled to Val Sinestra, and then he took a few weeks to rest, and then he invited people to visit their friends and so on. And then Strauss has been there one time, but few of those people like Rachmaninoff or Mahler or whatsoever, they didn't visit him there. And so he must have gone down to Rosa to see Rachmaninoff. And maybe they met in a hotel or whatever, and had a fine dinner. But I couldn't find any traces of that.
After Rachmaninoff's flight from Russia in late 1917, he did perform with Mengelberg in New York, but did not return to the Concertgebouw Orchestra until 1929. Once again as a soloist in his second piano concerto. The Dutch premiere of his fourth piano concerto in the following season was probably already planned when he met Willem Mengelberg informally in the summer of 1930. However, Mengelberg would not conduct this concert himself. In 1930, Rachmaninoff's fourth piano concerto was played under Monteux, not under Mengelberg.
Yeah.
So I thought perhaps he had first tried to get Mengelberg perform the work, or probably I'm mistaken entirely.
Well, in 1930 also, Mengelberg's connection with New York came to an end, which was very traumatic for him. And at the same time as Rachmaninoff performed with Monteux in Amsterdam, Mengelberg conducted in Paris. So maybe this was
Too much
already. Well, yes, on the same evening he conducted in Paris, and Monteux conducted with Rachmaninoff in Amsterdam. But so there are many causes why they didn't work together. and that nothing to do with some personal questions or whatever. I know about Mengelberg. He wanted to have Mahler many times to Amsterdam, and he only succeeded in getting him 4 times. So Rachmaninoff and Mengelberg, of course, also had very busy schedules. So how to fit in all those different things.
Exactly.
And Mengelberg, what I said, was very good with Monteux, so he will never have had an argument about this.
So because Pierre Monteux was, of course, then what was he called?
The second principal conductor.
Second principal conductor.
I know Mengelberg and Monteux. Mengelberg said, for instance, about the pieces by Richard Strauss, let him choose, and then I will. What's left? I will make a choice of.
As far as premieres are concerned, Rachmaninoff performed the Rhapsody for the first time in the Netherlands only in 1938 with Mengelberg, and we have a score. It is published by his own publishing house, Dair, Tatjana and Irina Rachmaninoff. So again, here we find a lot of metronome markings, but now the nice thing is that Rachmaninoff has become as smart as not to give any metronome marking throughout the entire score, which is actually, if you look here, there is neither any metronome marking, and we can of course not go through the entire score, but in Rachmaninoff's own score, there is nothing like a metronome marking. I've checked and checked throughout, and couldn't find anything of this kind. Look here, paste overs. Those are here. But this, of course, has a different authority because it already makes clear how Rachmaninoff performs the work. And they performed it only in
1938.
Yes. And he didn't perform it anymore with other soloists that you know.
No, I don't think so. No, I'm quite sure. No.
Exactly.
So he performed it just a few times, and that makes it clear that it is not so heavily annotated, but it's quite intense and prepared.
Because you see
all those. Every part he gives another metronome marking. So
exactly. So he is also very specific about the way the strings should play. Again, also with the leggero, and all these markings are very, very specific. Specific, even if it's compared to third piano concerto. It's a little blank.
But well. We talked about this, but many Mengelberg performed the piano concertos, the second and the third, many times, and also with different soloists. So this piece, he didn't make a tradition of it because he had no performances.
Now that we are going through these wonderful scores of Rachmaninoff's Paganini Rhapsody, there's also an anecdote of not so happy, a painful moment, but good friendships can have good quarrels also.
Yeah. Well, the essence is this, that Maria Rosé, the daughter-in-law of Arnold Rosé, connected with Mahler, visited the concert and went to Mengelberg, and then after that Maria Rosé went to Rachmaninoff, who sat in a corner with his face to the walls, and it was murmuring or whatever.
Mumbling.
This man ruined my whole concerto.
So he was really...
So he was really upset. And when I first read that, you feel, what has happened there?
Yeah.
And I nowhere you can find a trace of a quarrel or an otherwise understanding. I've checked reviews in the newspapers. No, it was beautiful playing together, and so on and so on.
And in fact, the work was a success because the fourth piano concerto wasn't such a success with the critics. So.
So what has happened?
Yeah.
Is there something in the working together that Rachmaninoff didn't like? Was the orchestra too loud? Or was it fragmented with those? Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
I would like to hear a suggestion what might have gone wrong, which the people and the connoisseurs didn't see.
There is the famous picture of Mengelberg rehearsing this concerto, and what I heard, Mengelberg had glasses, didn't he?
Yeah. When he was really reading, he needed his glasses. So when he read with his glasses conducting, then he was not 100% prepared.
Okay.
So when he, for instance, with singers with small areas, he did it like this because this was easy and he had maybe not seen it before or hardly seen it before. But I cannot imagine this with this piece, having it so annotated
and remarkably, those pictures give away that he was wearing his glasses at that moment.
But are there photos of performing, or was it in the rehearsal?
It was in the rehearsal.
Yeah.
During the rehearsal,
maybe.
And God knows, perhaps Rachmaninoff was of course very sensitive to anything that.
Yeah. Maybe something happened in this kind of communication.
Because he of course expected Mengelberg to be fabulous.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So the bar was enormously high for Mengelberg.
Yeah. After the meeting of Maria Rosé, there must have been a meeting at Mengelberg's home, because we have a guest book of Mengelberg from his home in the Van Egenstraat, and there Rachmaninoff has made an inscription, which is Frau und Herren Willem Mengelberg zur freundlichen Erinnerung an Nathalie und Sergei Rachmaninoff, and then between brackets, Componist van wenig bekannten Werken. Am Sonntag, 19 Oktober 1938.
So that's the...
Is this reluctant, or is the irritation gone?
It would seem that what he says.
Composer of.
Exactly, but what he says is. Well, it's not exactly neutral. There's humor in it also, because it's to Madame and Madame first, and Willem Mengelberg, as a cherished memory, as a friendly memory, to Nathalie and Sergei Rachmaninoff, and then Rachmaninoff does something typically Rachmaninoff. Tongue-in-cheek, he says, composer of slightly known works, or some, it's not clear because wenig could also be some known works. So he's making it very, very small, and that's typically Rachmaninoff, because, for instance, when he had built his giant house in Switzerland, he says, well, I've made a tiny place here. So that's typically Rachmaninoff. And what is very special here is that he doesn't write Sonntag. He writes Zondag.
Yeah.
In
Dutch.
In Dutch. So there must have been a kind of report, but it isn't the same as Meine Freunde.
No.
So
not
it's
so
there
warm.
it's a little
It's not so
more
warm.
distant, yes.
Yeah.
And we don't know why.
No, of course.
In the summer of 1939, Dutch newspapers announced Rachmaninoff's planned concerts with the Concertgebouw Orchestra for the 1939-1940 season. The concert in Amsterdam was festively scheduled for March 28, 1940, Willem Mengelberg's 69th birthday. However, Rachmaninoff would not return to war-threatened Europe. His replacement did, however, result in the only 2 recordings of Rachmaninoff's work made by Willem Mengelberg and the Concertgebouw Orchestra. The composer himself did not allow radio recordings of any of his concerts until the end of his career. His substitute did consent. Yet it is doubtful whether those recordings satisfied Willem Mengelberg at all.
So despite the discrepancy between Rachmaninoff and Mengelberg in 1938, it was not so severe that Rachmaninoff didn't want to perform as Mengelberg anymore.
Exactly. When we were working at Senar, at Rachmaninoff's home in Switzerland, we were going through all the material. We found this little paper here, which is written on a hotel note, not by Rachmaninoff, but by another person who writes the dates of concerts in 1940. 28th of March 1940, and Amsterdam, 30th The Hague, April 2nd, Rotterdam, April 4th, Brussels. And it says concert direction, De Koos. So, and this was of course then the impresario in the Netherlands.
Yeah.
So what we see is that they already had planned to play another concert together. And it was even
2 years later.
Well, it's yeah.
And then the war came, so nothing of this went through. And then we have, as a substitute, Gieseking.
Yes, of course, because Gieseking replaced Rachmaninoff, probably at Rachmaninoff's behest, because it would seem that because Rachmaninoff was fond of both Horowitz performances of the Third Piano Concerto and Gieseking's performances. Completely different performances,
Yes.
actually. So that's Rachmaninoff.
Had you heard Gieseking?
Yes.
With a slower tempo.
Exactly.
Well, and that's just the next thing, huh? Gieseking is coming to Amsterdam. He has not much time to rehearse, so he sends Mengelberg quite a letter with all his tempo indications and changes and so on. And then we have those documents here, the letter of Gieseking to Mengelberg, and then maybe a survey typed out by someone from the Concertgebouw or whatever. And then Mengelberg has read this, and he comments on Gieseking's annotations, and he writes, alles andere tempi als de componist spielt, with 2
exclamation marks.
Yes. So you feel he is upset, and then we know that he in the rehearsals to the orchestra said about Gieseking, guter Pianist, kein guter Musiker. So that's quite something to tell to to your instrument, to the musicians.
And what do musicians
And the
think?
musicians were upset about this. How dares he tell us about this great keys?
Because
and so on.
it's quite something to play the third piano concerto, even if you play it a little slower.
Yes. It demonstrates, of course, how Mengelberg valued the insight of the composer, who was, and then someone who gives a very different performance. He didn't like that, and so people often tell Mengelberg has a willful kind of interpretation. No, Mengelberg also tries to follow the composer's wishes.
Exactly. And that authority is precisely what we find here again, but now we as researchers look at this and are amazed at the detail and at the many things, the many questions we didn't know, and performers should be also.
Mm-hmm.
Even though Rachmaninoff himself accepted performances as widely differing as his own Horowitz or Gizzi.
Yeah.